on the property. Service times are 11 a.m. and 6 p.m. on Sunday and 7 p.m. on Wednesday. You can find further information about our church on our church website at calvarybaptistnews.com. Please join us for our service today as we look into God's holy word of truth.
Made America what it is, what it was. But it wasn't built because they had an easy time. They were forged in the furnace of fire. The worst of times, many times, can bring out the best of men. And that's exactly what happened here. And now he introduces the four of those men. And down in verse number 6, these were the children, really the royalty. We don't really know the background of Daniel as far as was he part of the royal family or was he just part of the nobility. But they came, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. We call them Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. We use their Babylonian names, but really their Israeli names I don't know why they're not referenced by their Israeli names. Only Daniel really is. His name is changed to Belteshazzar. But first of all, we see here that anything that God uses, and God is going to use Daniel, he's still using Daniel today. But anything that God uses, he always tests. And right as soon as they get to Babylon, these four men are going to be tested. By the way, there's more than four. There was probably hundreds and maybe even thousands of these young men that were there. But we only know about four of them. Because they were the ones, the cream that came to the top. And so they were tested. And we're going to find out that Daniel was a great old man because Daniel was a great young man. There was I didn't remember much from high school, because I wasn't there half the time, but I do remember this in English class, this little phrase, the child is the father of the man. And the English teacher said to us, what does that mean? And I was like, I don't know. But I know now. You know, what you are as a young person, you think, well, you sow your wild oats and stuff as a young person. Let me tell you something. What you are as a young person is really going to form what you're going to be as an old person. Now, things can change. You can get saved, and that really changes you. But really, your character as a young person, that's going to carry over to your youth and your young adulthood and your middle adulthood. And what you are as an old man really began when you become a... And the reason Daniel was so wonderful later on is because he was so wonderful at the start. But he was tested. He found himself in a new environment. He wasn't at home anymore. He was in a different country. His mommy and daddy weren't with him. His aunts and uncles weren't with him. He was there alone. Maybe he had some friends of his age group that were there, but he was in a new environment. He went to a new school. It says in verse number 4 that they may teach them the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. They're actually going to go into a 3-year college here. And they're going to be, before they come before Nebuchadnezzar, they're going through 3 years of schooling. They're going to learn all the wisdom of the Babylonians about all kinds of different things, but they're also going to be learning a new language, the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. And what really the Babylonians were going to do here, they're trying to get these Jewish people to surrender their identity. They're trying to make these Jews into Gentiles. And so there's a test here. They want them to be changed. They want to remove their identity. You know, Satan wants to do that with you too. I hope you have an identity as a Christian. You've heard this often said, if you're accused of being a Christian, is there enough evidence to convict you? I hope so. Hope everybody in your family knows that you're a Christian. Hope everybody in your street knows you're a Christian. Everybody at work or school knows you're a Christian. If you are a Christian, you should have that identity. But the Satan would love to rub. He wants you to act like the world. He wants to make you, to change you so that there's no difference between you and the world. That's what they're doing with these guys. We want you to be like us. And there was a new diet. Look at verse number 5. The king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat, of the wine which he drank. And so, nourishing them 3 years, that at the end thereof they might stand before the king. So there's a new diet. There's new food here. And that food would have been forbidden from the Jews because in Leviticus chapter 11, verses 1 to 8, it gives you what we call kosher food. There's some food that Jews can't eat if they're to be obedient to God. If they're living under the Old Testament law, which Judaism is right now. And if you go to Israel, if you go to the hotels in Israel, you'll find that they have 2 kitchens. It's really weird. You go to the breakfast meals, and they'll have no meat. There's no meat. There's no meat at all on the breakfast table. There's all dairy. And you'll have cheeses and milks and cereals and that kind of stuff, but no meat whatsoever. And then in the lunch meal, you go into the lunch meal, and there is no dairy. You'll not find cheese or milk on that lunch table. It's all meat and fish and stuff like that. But they never mix the dairy and the meat produce together. It's because it's kosher. But you see, the Babylonians didn't have any of those laws, and so there's all kinds of things that were set before these children, these Jewish young men. And then he gave them a new name. I mean, your name is your identity. Somebody called your name, that's you. That's your history, that's your family. That's you, that's your identity. And he changed their names. Down in verse 7, unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave names. So Daniel means God is my judge. Dan means judge. You know, there's one of Jacob's children was called Judge. And the El for Elohim. So Daniel means God is my judge. Judge is God. My judge is God is my judge. Daniel. And his name is changed to Belteshazzar, which means Bel's prince, he was a false god. So now he's got a name that promotes a false god. Mishael means God who is as God. Who is as God? Who is as Elohim? And his name is changed to Shadrach, which means illumined by the sun god. And Hananiah, which means beloved of the Lord, is changed to Meshach, which means who is like Venus. And Azariah means the Lord is my help. And his name was changed to Abednego, the servant of Nego, a false god. Oh my goodness. They're trying to rip all of their identity and all of their religion out of them. What a great test, these young men. And these were only teenagers, by the way. These were not grown men. These were young fellas. And most of their party capitulated. And they identified. And they changed. And they moved. But not so with Daniel and these other three. Lots of pressure upon these young men to deny their identity as one of God's children. And to follow false gods and fleshly lusts. But something happened. And we see in verse number 8 Daniel's tenacity. First Daniel's test, and now Daniel's tenacity. Notice in verse number 8, but Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the prince of eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Now, Daniel probably couldn't do a whole lot about his location. He's a slave. He's a captive. He couldn't do much about his environment or his schooling or maybe even his language. But what he ate is probably the most personal thing you can have. You know, what he's going to be able to put in his body, that was really still under his control. You know, he could have reasoned, well, you know, while in Rome, do as the Romans. You know, let's not rock the boat. Let's not cause problems or make waves while in Rome, do as the Romans. So we'll just do what they ask us to do and we'll eat whatever they put in for it. But Daniel knew the Bible. He knew that he was restricted in that. And who knows what they were given. I mean, it could have been very tasty. He'd never had a ham sandwich before, you know, some of the food that we would enjoy. And the Babylonians, and he could have said, well, you know, let's try some new things. Yeah, that looks pretty nice. We could probably try that. Maybe that would taste really good. And by the way, he looked around and everybody else was doing it. There was hundreds, maybe thousands of people that were there. These young fellas, the cream of the crop of Israel were there. And there's only 4 of them who are resisting. And so he said, well, everybody else is doing it. You know, I think really, when we look at ourselves as believers, I think many times it is true that we are too easily persuaded. That we capitulate and we compromise very easily. When any kind of pressure is on, well, we go with the flow and we give up too easy. And if that was true of Daniel and these 3 men, we wouldn't have a book to be reading and studying this morning. But no, Daniel purposed in his heart. He had made up his own mind for himself. He wasn't going to be controlled by these outside pressures and forces. He had something inside of him that was rising up, that was going to be strong. It was going to be courageous. It was going to resist these pressures. Daniel purposed in his heart. It's almost like he made a decision before he was going to have to make a decision. He had already thought these things through, and he basically knew within his heart, I am not going to do that. I am not going to eat what they're going to set before me. I am not going to drink what they are drinking. Daniel's heart was united. And the Bible talks about having a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Well, I'm for the Lord. Well, bit of pressure. Well, maybe not so much. And, well, yes, I'm for the Lord, but maybe not so much. And we're in and out and back and forward and changeable. And, that's no way to live. No. And as a Christian, that's not the way to live. Do you know that? Right. You'll have a way, way less stress in your life if you just purpose in your heart, I'm the Lord's, I belong to the Lord, I'm going to honour the Lord, if I know it's right, I'm going to do it. Amen. And you make up your mind before you ever get to those situations or those choices, this is the direction I've chosen, I'm going in this direction, I'm not changing, I'm not going back, I'm not getting off course, I'm making my mind up, I'm going to have a single heart toward God. A single heart. I'm not going to be double-minded. I'm not going to be in and out and on. Because when you're double-minded, all kinds of stress. You gotta choose all the time. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? If you make your mind up, you won't have to have that stress. That's what I made up for you. Some people woke up this morning and said, should I go to church this morning? Should I go to church this morning? And they're wrestling, should I go, should I not go? Should I go, should I not go? And they're thinking, why should I go? Or, well, I should go. And, well, maybe I don't want to go. For a disciple of Jesus, you don't have that question. I mean, you've got your shoes shined the night before. You've got your check written out sitting on your Bible the night before. You're ready to roll. You don't have any of that stress. And that's just one example. Daniel didn't have that stress. He had a united heart, a single mind. Really that's where our battles are fought. It's in our heart and in our mind. And Daniel was serious about his relationship with God and the responsibilities that he knew that he had. And so as a young man, he's a young man here, but how did he get to this place as a teenager where he had such a courage and such just a ramrod? He had a spine. When everybody else was just falling away and capitulating, no, Daniel was standing strong. He had 3 mates with him, but all 4 of them were standing strong. I don't know this. I don't know, but he must have had a really good family. His mommy and daddy must have taught him right from the time he was, brought home. I mean, he must have had a really godly influence. He was so tenacious. And that's the word that we're using here, tenacity. We have 2 dogs. We used to have 3 dogs. We have 2 dogs now. Peanut and Pippa. The other one was Peyton. And the cat was Patches. All our pets are Peas. So anyway, our Peanut, she's like 14 years old. She's a senior dog, right? But she's always had her own wee personality. And Pippa, she's like chalk and cheese. She's different too. And they're all rescue dogs. We found them on the road and stuff and brought them in, looked after them. I've had Peanut for, I think it was 13 years or something I have her now. But anyway, little Pippa, she has all these toys. I thought when we get rid of the kids, our living room would need to be nice and tidy. And it was for a time till we got that. Now we have dog toys. And if she doesn't have them, she wants to go get them. And Leslie says, let her have her toys. Oh, here we go. And it's not one toy. She has to have all of them. All of them spread all over the carpet. So anyway, she brings me these toys. And she'll tease me with them. She'll bring these little pool toys, and she'll put them at my feet. And then she looks up at me like, what are you going to do about that? And I go for it. And she grabs it. And she comes and she covers it with her body, Now she wants me to get a hold of it, but she's teasing me. So I grab a hold of it, and then she gets it. Oh, she gets it. And she puts it in her mouth, and she will just wrestle with me, and I'll pull very hard. She will not let go. Will not let go. And, I'll let it loose a little bit. That's when it really gets her, because she gets aggravated, because I'm loosening it off, and she'll start growling at me, and then I pull it again. Well, Peanut doesn't like that. Now, you don't use the term PC. PC in Great Britain is for police constable. So PC Peanut, as we call her, she is the moderator in the home. So our Pippa loves watching TV. It's unbelievable. But we put programs, especially dog shows, she'll be over there, and she's sitting right in front of the TV doing this, watching it. So it's hilarious, But anyway, when she sees another dog, she starts barking. Bark, 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 bark. Now, Peanut doesn't like that. Oh no, she likes peace in the house. So Peanut will run over beside Pippa, and she'll bark at Pippa. And then she'll look at us like, why are you letting her bark like that? And we call her PC Peanut because he's there to control the situation. Well, when I'm wrestling with Pippa, And she is tenacious. You know, she's not a bulldog, but she's like a bulldog. She will not let go. And Peanut sees that. She doesn't like that. That's upsetting the peace of the house. And she'll come over and she'll bark at me. Why are you doing this with this dog? She'll bark at Pippa. You stop that. And so what I do then is I'll take the toy and I will give it to Peanut. And Peanut will grab a hold of it. And she'll grab a hold of it for all of about 3 seconds. And she'll do this, and the two dogs are pulling, and then all of a sudden Peanut will just let go. And then she'll walk away. Pippa doesn't let go. And I thought about those two dogs and the way it relates to us. Because sometimes we'll start something, and it looks like we're going to do it, and then all of a sudden we just let go and we walk away. And then there are other Christians that get a hold of something and they will not let go. It's kind of like Jacob we learned about when he wrestled with the Lord. He says, I will not let you go unless you bless me. Sometimes we're too easy to let go. We're too easy to give up. We're too easy to capitulate. It'd be too easy for Daniel to say, well, okay. He didn't do that. He grabbed a hold of this thing and he was going to hold on for dear life. He was absolutely tenacious because he had instilled in him somehow, I don't know if it was his parents or what it was, but he had something on the inside of him that was unique, it was special. Nobody else had it hardly. When we look around today, you have that term, people are sheeple. They just go with the crowd. Whatever happens, we just go with it. And they don't think for themselves, and they don't decide for themselves, and they don't stand for themselves. I'll tell you what, the World War II generation knew what it was to stand up and to face things and to be tenacious. Like a Churchill, you know, that's what they called him, the English bulldog, old Churchill. He says, we'll fight them on the beaches, we'll fight them in the countryside, we'll fight them in the streets. When the Germans come in to Great Britain, we're not going to give up. We're not going to be like the French or the Belgians. We are going to fight them till the very bitter end. And that's why Germany didn't get in. Because the worst of times sometimes can make the best of men when we rise to the challenge. And Daniel did so. And so we see the test of Daniel. And we see the tenacity of Daniel. But I want you to also see in verse 8 the tact of Daniel. Look at verse number 8. The last part. It says, therefore, he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Therefore he requested. He asked politely the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Now Daniel took a stand, but he did it in the right way. I want you to look over to James, please. James chapter 3. You see, what Daniel 1 verse 10 tells us is that the eunuch's life was in danger. He says, look, if you don't eat this food and you start looking skinny and sick, and you come before Nebuchadnezzar, he said, why should I risk my head? You're putting my life on the line. In other words, Daniel's decision wasn't just about himself. It was going to affect the prince of the eunuchs. It's going to affect his life as well. And you know what? Daniel understood that. He respected that. And his attitude was something that was very important. He had tact. He was a man of reason. Look here in James chapter 3 and verse number 13. James says, who is a wise man and endued with knowledge among you? Let him show out of a good conversation his works with meekness. You know, meekness is strength under control. It means that you have the ability, but you don't use it. Meekness is being gentle. It's not weakness, because you could do it, but you restrain yourself. Meekness of wisdom. But if you have bitter envy and strife in your hearts, glory not and lie not against the truth. This wisdom descendeth not from above, but is earthly, sensual, devilish. For where envy and strife is, there is confusion in every evil work. But, now he's contrasting earthly wisdom with heavenly wisdom. Verse 17, heavenly wisdom. But the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, and easy to be entreated, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality, without hypocrisy. The fruit of righteousness is sown in peace of them that make peace. Did you know that you don't have, just because you're a Christian, doesn't mean you have to be a knucklehead? Just because you might be a preacher. You know, some preachers are knuckleheads. Sometimes I'm a knucklehead. But I'm trying not to be. But I know a lot of preachers that are knuckleheads, and they've absolutely no tact whatsoever. Do you know that Jesus had tact? You know, Jesus, and you can see it all through the scriptures, but in John 16, verse 12, Jesus said this, I have yet many things to say unto you, but ye cannot bear them now. You know, Jesus didn't want to seem unreasonable. Jesus was not unreasonable. We should be reasonable. And Daniel was reasonable. Now, he had his conviction and he took his stand, but he did it with the right spirit and the right way. And he was tactful about what he was doing. He was helping, he was seeing the situation from the Prince of the Eunuch's position. We've got to be tactful with people. You say that's not a good thing. It's a very good thing. Remember, Les and I, our Andrew was just a wee baby. He was on a prom. Baby stroller, and we were downtown in Belfast, right in the shopping district of Belfast. We're going through, I think it was down Queen Street in Belfast, and there's shoppers everywhere. It's probably Saturday, and shoppers everywhere. And there's an old boy, I think he was a Brethren preacher, and he was a saved man, probably meant well, you know. But he was standing there with a little bullhorn on the side of the road, and Les and I are walking down. The kids are there. Andrew's in the prom. I'm pushing the prom, the baby carriage along, and he starts. First of all, we heard him. You could hear him with the bullhorn. He says, and basically, here's what he's saying: "You're all going to hell." And I thought, well, I'm not going to hell. And then the closer we got, and he looked at our prom, our baby car stroller, and he says, "Another funeral procession on the way to hell." I got mad at him. I thought, hey, wait a second here. And I stopped. I said, ladies, just hold on a minute. I can have a word with this guy. And, it was like water off a duck's back. But I told him, I went over and I said, let me tell you something. I says, I'm a believer. I'm a Christian. And I'm not going to hell. And this is not a funeral procession. This is a baby carriage. And I got kind of upset about it. But sometimes street preachers they don't have tact. Street preaching is an art. That's how I started preaching, was preaching on 9th Street in Chattanooga. Before Sunday school, years and years ago. But you have to be easy to be entreated. You have to be gentle. You have to be pure. You have to be wise. You have to have tact with people. And Daniel showed his character, not only with his conviction to stand for something, but he did it in the right way. There's more could be said about that. So Daniel's test, and Daniel's tenacity, and Daniel's tact. And lastly, in verses 15 to verse 21, we have Daniel's triumph. The Bible says in 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 30, "For them that honour me I will honour, and they that despise me shall be lightly esteemed." And of course, what Daniel said to, actually, the understudy in verse 11, Melzar, then Daniel said to Melzar, whom the prince of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, verse 12, "Prove thy servants, I beseech thee, 10 days, and let them give us pulse to eat and water to drink." So he was reasonable. Here he says, "Look, I understand the kind of situation we're in here, but here's what we could do. If you just give us our normal food, which is like herbs, pulse, right, and don't give us all this fat, greasy stuff and alcoholic drink from the king's table." You keep that. Just give us the stuff we're used to, and then for 10 days, and then come back, and you do what you think is right. But you come back and you evaluate. And if we're looking sick or we're looking thin, you just do whatever you think is right. But give us that opportunity. Prove thy servants, his humility. And so that's what they did. And so Daniel and his friends were tested for 10 days. And look at verse number 15. "And at the end of the 10 days, their countenance appeared fairer and fatter in flesh than all the children which did eat the portion of the king's meat." See, they were the only ones that didn't do it. And do you know what happened to those other Jewish kids? Then they started chowing down on those ham sandwiches and all the stuff that they were not used to. And you know what happened? They got sick. They started eating a diet that they weren't supposed to do it anyway. And God was chastising them anyway. But it didn't agree with them. But Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they're eating the same stuff that they've been eating all their lives. And it agreed with them. They got fatter and fresher and healthier looking than everybody else. But you know what the ultimate principle was? God says, if you honour me, I'll honour you. And not only that, when they go through this university, In verse 19, the king communed with them after the 3 years. They come before Nebuchadnezzar. And among them all was found none like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore stood they before the king, and in all matters of wisdom and understanding that the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers that were in all his realm. And Daniel continued even unto the first year of King Cyrus. God honored them here. He says, you're putting your neck on the line for me. I'm going to take care of you. And so when they came before Nebuchadnezzar, there was nobody like these 4 men. And Daniel was the chief one. And you're going to find that God favoured Daniel. God honoured Daniel here. He honoured the faithful 3 in the fiery furnace. He says, I'll come in there with you. They went in there bound. The only thing that burned was their ropes. He says, I see 4 men and they're walking around loose. What do you mean we bound them? What happened to their ropes? Well, they burned off. But their clothes, there's not even the smell of smoke upon them. God honoured them. And he brought them out alive. You know why he honoured them? Because they said, you can do what you want. But we're not going to bow down to that idol. And God will deliver us. He's able to deliver us. And he will deliver us from thine hand, O King Nebuchadnezzar. And then old Daniel, at the end of his life, as an old man, when we get weak and maybe not as sure of ourselves, but he had to go into the lion's den. You know what? God showed up there too. He says, God has come. He sent his angel and he shut the lion's mouth so that they cannot harm me. And Daniel and these 3 men honoured God, and God honoured them. Amen. Do you want God to be on your side? Do you know how uncertain life is? Do you know how difficult life can be? Do you want life fight? Do you want God to be on your side, or do you want God to be for you, or do you want God to be against you? I want God. I can't face life without him. I need him to honour me. Well, that happens when we honour him. You make much of Jesus, and he will make much of you.
Thank you, friends, for listening to our broadcast today. All of our broadcast sermons can be found online at calvarybaptistnews.com. And if you live in the McMinnville, Tennessee area, we would love to have you come visit with us at our new tabernacle at 610 Myers Lane, McMinnville, Tennessee. This is Pastor Tom Fittis, wishing you every blessing as you seek to serve the Lord.
Then someone cared enough to bring the truth to me. Someone cared, and now my soul is free. I know it wasn't easy to be bold enough to share, but I'm so glad someone cared.